You know what's weirdest? We're obsessed with boomers and their real estate. We analyze millennials and their avocado toast. Zoomers and their side hustles get column inches. But there's an entire generation sitting quietly in the middle, managing money in the weirdest way imaginable. And no one talks about them. Generation X, born between 1965 and 1980. It's your coworker who's quietly accumulated more wealth than millennials could ever dream of, yet acts like they're one step away from financial disaster. It's your uncle who has $50,000 in savings, but refuses to replace his 15-year-old Toyota. It's the friend who spends $500 on concert tickets, but clips coupons for grocery shopping. And here's what no one tells you. Their money psychology is completely different from any other generation. It all goes back to one specific moment in economic history that broke their brains in the most interesting way. Picture this, 1983. You're 10 years old, and your dad takes you to the bank. You watch as he deposits his check. The same company he's worked for 15 years. The same steady check every 2 weeks. The teller knows him by name. He has a pension, a savings account that actually pays interest. The mortgage will be paid off in 12 years, right on schedule. It all makes sense. Work hard, save money, retire in comfort. The formula works. Now, fast forward to 2008. You're 35. You've followed the formula. You've done everything right, and you've just watched your 401k get cut in half, the value of your house collapse, and your trusted company start laying off people who've worked there for 20 years. The formula was a lie, and that betrayal shaped every dollar decision they would make for the rest of their lives. The first oddity about Generation X when it comes to money is that they're simultaneously the most anxious about retirement and the most consistent savers. According to a 2023 study by the Transamerica Center for Retirement Studies, 70% of Generation Xers say they're terrified of retirement, yet they have the second highest 401k contribution rates of any generation. They don't believe it will work, but they do it anyway. Psychologists call this defensive pessimism. Essentially, you assume everything will go wrong, so you prepare obsessively, and then you're protected when disaster strikes. It's debilitating, but for Generation X, it's what's allowed them to survive. And frankly, they're not wrong to be paranoid. They watched their parents' pensions disappear. They graduated right into a recession. They bought houses right before the crash. They're not pessimists. They are realists who have been burned too many times. Let's talk about something Generation X invented before millennials even gave it a cute name: side hustle. Federal Reserve data shows that Generation Xers have higher rates of self-employment and secondary income than boomers and millennials. But here's the catch. Most of them still hold down their day jobs. They're not trying to quit the 9-hour workday to live the dream. They're building escape tunnels, keeping the main exit open. Your Gen X neighbor isn't flipping houses because he loves real estate. He's doing it because he watched his coworker get kicked out the door with a cardboard box after 20 years of loyalty. It's 1995. You're watching your mother's company downsize. People who worked there before you were born suddenly find themselves unemployed at 50. No notice, no safety net, just goodbye. This image is burned into the brain of every Generation Xer. Never, ever depend on one source of income. Not because you're entrepreneurial, but because you're afraid. And that's why they have an Etsy shop, a consulting business, and a rental property. It's not ambition, it's an insurance policy. There's something else that baffles marketers. Generation X won't hesitate to change jobs if they perceive a threat, but they're strangely loyal to brands. Adobe research found that Gen Xers are 34% more likely than millennials to stick with the brands of their youth, even when cheaper alternatives exist. They'll quit a Fortune 500 company via email, but they'll drive across town to the same coffee shop where the owner knows their order. They have zero loyalty to institutions and fierce loyalty to the people and products they trust. The psychology here is pretty simple. Institutions betrayed them. People haven't. Or at least when people betray you, you can hold them accountable. When a corporation does, you get severance pay and a standard letter. So yes, they still buy Levi's, listen to the same bands, and use the same brands they loved in school. Not because they were stuck in the past, but because those things weren't lying to them. And this is where Generation X gets really interesting. They have high savings rates and emergency funds, but they've also pioneered spending on experiences. According to Eventbrite, Gen Xers spend about $3,000 a year on concerts, travel, and live events, more than any other generation in actual dollars. They're simultaneously financially paranoid and experience-driven extravagant. And it's the same psychology. They save obsessively because systems can't be trusted. But they spend on experiences because things can't be trusted either. Your house can sink, your car loses value, your possessions mean nothing when the economy tanked. But that Pearl Jam concert in 1994, no one can seize that memory. That's actually brilliant. They realize that in an unstable economy, experiences offer a better return on investment than things. A bank can't foreclose on a trip you took. You can't lose your memories in a market crash. You know what really gives away a Gen Xer? It's not their Spotify playlist, it's their document folder. AARP research shows that 61% of Gen Xers keep physical copies of important financial documents. Compare that to 34% of millennials. You might think they're just not tech savvy. Wrong. This generation built the internet. They wrote the code that powers your banking apps. But they also remember databases crashing, digital records disappearing, and companies changing their terms of service with a single click. They trust technology 99% of the time, but they trust paper 100%. It's redundancy by design. Digital banking? Sure. But the paper statement is in a safe. Cloud storage? Yes. But a hard drive in a fireproof box is a must. It's not retrograde thinking. It's insurance against a system failure. Something they've seen time and time again. Let's talk about their relationship with debt, because the numbers are staggering. According to Experian, Generation X carries the highest overall debt load. But if you look closer, you'll see not spendthrifts, but strategists. They might take out a $500,000 mortgage, but they'll fight for every penny to avoid a $2,000 credit card debt. Why? Because control is important to them. A mortgage is predictable. It's a fixed payment and a clear end. A credit card is chaos, a quagmire that never ends. They saw it consume their parents in the 1980s. The lesson they learned: borrow only what you can put on the card and pay off. They use debt as leverage for assets, real estate, businesses. But buying a sofa on credit is a slow death for them. Now comes the most interesting part: their relationships with financial advisors. Generation X trusts experts the least. They are the last generation to believe in self-education. They grew up in a world where knowledge had to be gleaned from books and tested in practice. So they create their own Excel spreadsheets, read company reports, and manage their own portfolios. Not because they consider themselves geniuses, but because they've seen what happens when people entrust their pensions to smart guys in suits. They'll double-check everything, study the theory, and only then make a move. This isn't arrogance, it's financial self-defense. If they hire an advisor, it's only to confirm their own calculations. And here's what it all comes down to. Generation X is the bridge between the old world of guarantees and the new world of uncertainty. They are financial realists. They know that a job doesn't guarantee security. They know that the government can change the rules of the game at any moment. They know that another black swan could happen tomorrow. But instead of falling into depression or spending everything on crypto in the hopes of a miracle, they simply keep digging their escape tunnel. Look at your Gen X neighbor. They may look like an ordinary person with an old car, but they likely have a paid mortgage, 3 incomes, and a folder in their safe that would allow them to survive a nuclear winter. They don't flaunt their wealth on Instagram because they know the less the systems know about you, the safer you are. This generation has learned to play a game whose rules are constantly changing. They don't believe the system is fair, but they've learned to win while maintaining a cool head. So, if you've identified these traits within yourself, a passion for paper receipts, a distrust of corporations, and a love of experiences over things, congratulations. The spirit of Generation X lives in your financial DNA. And frankly, in our uncertain world of 2026, this is perhaps the best survival strategy. The world may promise you one thing and deliver another. But if you have a plan B, a plan C, and a stash of cash under your mattress, just in case, you'll be the one who stays on your feet. Your habits aren't just random, they're your response to the world that shaped you. And looking at the Xers, you realize their strategy isn't paranoia. It's the highest form of adaptation.